Hello, and welcome to episode number 66 of the Wonder Stuff Vodcast, broadcast live on Google Hangouts on air every weekend. It's the place where you'll find news, information, commentary on science, engineering, and technology from the past week and beyond, and anything else that interests us from inside our tiny little human brains. As always, my name is John Gardner, and to help me out this evening, we have one of my colleagues. Say hello, Ross Davison. Say hello, chap.
Hello, chap.
Jolly good. Right, yes, so Richard's off somewhere else. He's not here, and therefore it's a double header for this evening. So, we're going to start with something that I'm going to try and keep all of the political stuff out of this one, right? Wonder of Stuff is a non-political body.
Apolitical, isn't it?
Apolitical, yes. It's apolitical. And in the UK, we had a vote to whether we should stay in the EU or leave the EU. And by some surprise, some people voted to leave. And it was a majority. Reasonably, not a huge majority, but it was a majority. So, current situation is we are going to leave the EU in a few years. Now, where does this leave the UK tech and science industries? I'll give you an idea of where I think it's going to leave us, and I hope not. But if you take what happened when the markets opened on Friday morning, two big FTSE 100 tech companies, BT, which I worked for, was 439. The stock with the share price was 439 pence on the 23rd, and on the end of the 24th, it was 385. So it lost 54 pence. Sage Group, another technical company who I also worked for, started at 632 pence on the 23rd and went to 606 on the 24th. That's 26 pence lost. That was pushed. That was the same across all the markets in most of the countries. Now, in the tech area, there's a lot. UK is pretty good in tech stuff. Not just in London. Everybody seems to think it's all London. It's not. I mean, the northeast where we're based is very heavily into tech at the moment. Hang on a minute. I'm just going to sneeze. Anyway, for some reason. Anyway, so the northeast is pretty good in this tech, and there's lots of companies, startups going into mature companies. Ross works for one. I work for one. So I guess from that point of view, it's a technology company. Borders shouldn't matter that much in terms of what services we provide. It's digital. But we do have, I don't know about you, Ross, but the company that I work for does have a fair few non-UK citizens working for us. So not just in our, because we've got an office in Paris, we've got an office in Singapore, we've got an office in the United States, and we've also got some sort of people working, one in Australia and stuff like that. But in our office in the UK, which is the head office, we have got some EU people working for us. And that's simply because there is a shortage of skills in this area. So it's fairly easy for them to come across EU, no borders. Great. Now, that's going to be one of the issues for the tech company, is we have a shortage of technical staff. Where do we get them from? Well, they're not being produced in the UK universities quick enough, or in the vast amount of numbers that we need. So we were bringing them into EU. That's going to be a problem now. And also, because we're losing some of the EU the benefits of being in the EU, the UK tech companies are really going to have to try and overperform to try and keep up with everybody else now. We've lost that, or we will be losing that that extra bonus of being in the EU. Now, in science, there are. I mean, if you read the Twitter feeds from some of the science organisations and scientists in this UK, they're not happy chappies. They're very, very depressed. So I think the problem we're going to have is that a whole about science is about collaboration, and we're going to have to really work to make sure that we're not going to get isolated. The fact that these EU barriers are going to go up, we're going to have to work to make sure that we are still a core member of the scientific community. There's also the fact that the huge amount of funding is coming from EU. I mean, in this UK, we have about £1 billion worth of EU funded projects coming into the UK every year. And also, if people's jobs, if people's research projects are getting stopped here because there is no EU funding, they will leave. They'll go somewhere where there is EU funding, Dublin, Stockholm, Netherlands, wherever. So there's going to be a brain drain. I hope there isn't, but there inevitably will be of some sort. 15% of the university staff are from the EU, for instance. 5% of university students are from the EU, and they would normally be. Some of those would stay around, but anyway. So that's my doom and gloom scenario. But I think Ross is going to try and perk me up somewhat with some positive news.
I'll try to. So, just to cover on a couple of those things. So, in terms of let's have a think. Where do I start here? The funding one's an interesting one. At the moment, I think between 2007 and 2013, in terms of the sort of research and development, the UK received 8.8 billion euros worth, and that's over 6 years. So, like you say, just over $1 billion. We contributed 5.4 billion, so that's a net 5, 6, 7, like 3.6 billion is what we actually got back for that, because we obviously part of what we contribute to the EU goes towards that as well. Yeah. Now, in terms of that, leaving the EU doesn't necessarily mean we miss out, because what we can do is you can become what's called an associated country. Now, this is what there's 16 of these already. Norway, Israel, Switzerland. They all benefit from these EU projects because they've actually got them set up as an associated country. Well, I think Switzerland's actually a third country, which is slightly worse, because Switzerland have expressly closed their borders to Croatia. Basically, it comes down to an agreement that has to be made. Now, there's a funding called Horizon 2020. You heard of that? Which is the current framework for between 2014 and 2020, where there's 74.8 billion euros worth of funding. Now, with that, even if you don't have the associated country status, if you're working on something with a number of countries, as long as one of them is an EU member state, you can still qualify for that funding. So it's not going to be cut off completely, but it does mean we do have to make sort of work with EU countries or become an associated country. With the associated country, you get exactly the same benefits as you do before. What we miss out on is we're not at the table that decides on how to run the funding, which is what we were. But in terms of actually getting the funding, we can still get it.
So, I mean,
what it will rely on...
Switzerland in particular is a special case. Switzerland is not in the EU. Switzerland is in what's known as EFTA, which is the European Free Trade Organization. That does not have any, that I could find, any links to a scientific-based research funding. That is just free trade. United Kingdom was one of the founding fathers of the European Free Trade Association in 1961. There was a good few of us. Norway, Iceland, Switzerland, Finland, Sweden, a good few of us. When we joined the EC, as it was, the European Community, in 1974, we came out of EFTA, and various other countries have came out of EFTA as the times passed. So the European Free Trade Organization is now just Iceland, Norway, Switzerland, and Liechtenstein. But like I say, that is just trade. That hasn't, and that European Free Trade Organization has its remit is to make sure that we keep in touch with the EU. So we could join that, but that's not going to help us in the science and earth. So we would have to join another thing, which would be this associated country thing.
Yeah, which I think has to happen. Otherwise, we're sort of cut off. But I mean, in terms of the funding, I was reading some interesting stuff. A few scientists have sort of pointed out the fact that in terms of funding, the UK government has fell behind in terms of funding science and research in this country, and we've become too reliant on EU funding, and also businesses. What was the graph I found? There's a graph about in terms of how much businesses invest in research and funding. It's obviously more than what the government does. So I think the government definitely needs to work out a better framework for ourselves. Obviously, one of the things that's come up is about how much money overall goes in the EU and we'll spend it all here. Well, they have to do that now. Otherwise, things are definitely going to. But
so that's a semi-positive thing. But I'm going to counteract that with something that's very depressing. Because the amount of money that's going to be wiped off the value of the pound and the trading within the UK means that obviously the money that we do have will have to be accounted for specifically, and how much of it left will go to science is a moot point.
Yeah, I mean, we don't want to digress too much into politics, but yeah, there's a lot of agreements and trade agreements and freedom of movement. A lot of people will have voted the way they did because they wanted to stop movement. That freedom of movement is going to have to be agreed in order to keep, in order to be involved in things like the associated country. Part of that involves freedom of movement of scientists. I think, although I do think there is a special case for people who are like PhD educated, in terms of people from outside the EU. You don't have as many visa restrictions and stuff if you're going to a country and you're going to work there for more than 2 years and you're going to earn a certain amount and this sort of thing. So obviously that, just if you weren't in science and tech, you don't necessarily have a PhD, obviously, but it's a bit open. Other things that sort of let's try and think of things to bring up your happiness. In terms of our scientific collaboration, there's actually more than 60% of our collaboration are done outside the EU anyway. America is who we collaborate with the most, and other countries. So obviously we need to keep on doing that. CERN and ESA aren't run by the EU, so they're not affected at all. So that's a good thing.
Who are they run by then? I thought is there not substantial amount of money in there?
It's not the EU. It's a European thing, not an EU thing.
So that doesn't preclude us then. That's good.
No, we're not precluded. I think the EU do support it. EU put money into it, but it's not run to be part of the EU. It's a European thing. Okay. And we're still in Europe, even if we're not in the EU.
Yeah, we are very much in Europe.
Yeah. And what else? There was another thing. There was a couple of other ones as well. I mean, I found a couple of interesting research papers, which I mentioned you earlier. They are quite long.
One of them was 63 pages.
Yeah, one of them 63 pages. One of them's 86. They are quite long, but they are actually quite interesting reading. In that one was from the House of Lords, one was from the Royal Society. And there is some interesting stuff that there's actually legitimate criticisms of how scientific research and progress was happening in the EU, which may improve in terms of some of the restrictions. But obviously, the trouble is with a lot of these, it's all may and could.
Yeah, there is a lot of conjecture, and I think because it's very nature, because it's apart from Greenland, I don't think anybody's left the EU before. So this is especially not the size of our country.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a lot of finger in the air stuff. What I desperately hope is all of the clever people, that they don't leave, but the clever people are the people who are the clever economics people, and the clever bureaucrats are the people who are working this out, and they do a good job.
Yeah. It just needs to be. It needs to be not panic. It needs to be thought through carefully. I mean, in terms of the clever people leaving, you sort of look at like sort of the top universities in Europe, and like 7 of them are in the UK and stuff. So hopefully
that is now. That's the thing. It's all now.
Hopefully that continues.
Yeah. Well, I think I think I will probably leave it around there. But I'm clearly in the very pessimistic camp, and clearly Ross is in the it's probably going to be all right.
I'm in the camp that things are going to have to change. I think there's a very immediate short-term effect, which is obviously what we're seeing in terms of the markets. But in terms of that, as always with markets, they will recover. It's all uncertainty that causes them to dive. We just need to bring in some certainty and move forward. Obviously, that's easier said than done. We don't know who's going to be moving it forward. But in terms of, I was just looking in terms of the FTSE, just to give it. What was it? Where was it? We are actually at the level of the FTSE is down to. Let's have a look. It was actually worse on June the 4th.
Yeah, to be fair, the FTSE
May the 19th it was lower, and April it was the lower. So
the FTSE tanked,
while it has been,
and that came back.
Yeah,
the pound didn't.
The pound hasn't yet. No, I was looking at the pound, and it actually reminded me how bad the drop was in 2007. When you look at what's happened to the pound.
Yeah, I did. Yeah,
it's quite shocking what happened then.
Yeah, yeah.
But again, you've just got to be confident that it's going to work itself out. It may be worrying for a while. And I suspect a lot of things that people may have thought would happen immediately following the vote will not happen at all. There'll just be different agreements put in place that effectively do the same thing.
Well, I mean, it's... there are people, Iceland, Norway, Switzerland, they are countries that trade with the EU. They are not in the EU. Iceland and Switzerland are in the European Economic Association or area.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
EEA. But Switzerland isn't. Mm-hmm. Their economies are doing okay.
Yeah. I think the difficulty is, like you mentioned, no one's gone from being a member to not being a member. And my concern is we may be punished by people for that.
I think that's a fair. Although Angela Merkel was saying today that nobody should be nasty about it.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think.
But I don't. I think in terms of the scientific community, I think the people that make the decisions on those sort of things know how important it is.
Yeah. Yeah, I hope,
and can look at the bigger picture. So,
yes, we can always hope that we have to hope that something reasonable comes out of this. But I think
on a happier note, apparently my mortgage is going to go down. Woohoo! Mortgage prices are going to go down.
Oh, that's all right, because
something.
My fixed price mortgage stopped in November, so it went back to the base rate, and I thought, I'm not going to fix it again. I'm just going to see for a bit.
Yeah.
So we shall see. Anyway, I'll leave that one there. I think probably what we'll do is, we can only wait because the whole entire country is only waiting, and until Westminster boards get their acts together and realise this is real, and we have to be adults about this and sort the damn thing. We shall see. So you're going to tell us, moving swiftly on into some lighter, actual, genuine sciencey stuff. You're going to tell us about some wacky new planey thing. Planey McPlane.
Yes. So we've covered on big planes before. I can't remember when it was, but I'm sure it was something that you brought up. And we mentioned
the airlifter or the airlander or the air.
Oh, that was it, wasn't it? Yeah, it was the airship, wasn't it?
The airship.
And we mentioned a plane. There was a plane called the Spruce Goose, which is the biggest plane that was ever made.
That was the seaplane, wasn't it?
It was, yeah.
With loads of engines on.
Yeah, in fact, I've got a photo. Let's get
Go
a
on.
photo.
Show us the photo, Ross. Show us the photo.
Share that.
Obviously, this for
that.
Ooh, sorry. I'll click onto that. So let me just. Ugh. Oh no, my mouse is dying. There you go.
Yeah. Right. So that was the Spruce Goose. Although I think it only flew once, but that had a 97.5 meter wingspan, which is huge.
And that's 8. Is that no? It's 8 props.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, quite impressive. And the plane that's the current largest plane is this one, which is huge.
That's the Antonov.
The Antonov. But I think this only has I think it's something like 80 something meters wingspan, is it?
Yeah, I have actually seen that take off at East Midlands Airport.
Yeah.
It's damn scary.
Yeah, I can imagine.
There's about a foot space at the right at the end of the runway. the fence at the end of the runway. There's a foot between the fence and its undercarriage when it takes off. It is scary. People duck.
Yeah. So anyway, this is at some point soon going to be overshadowed by this plane here. Now this is it's a Stratolaunch. So it's made by I don't know whether that's actually called the Stratolaunch. It's made by Stratolaunch Systems. This is funded by Microsoft co-founder Paul Allen. And last week, reporters went in to get their first look at it being built. And this will have a wingspan of 117 meters. So it's absolutely massive. And I've got another picture here to put that into context. So this shows you the other planes. So we've got a Boeing 747, then an Airbus, got the Spruce Goose, and then here you'll see the size of this carrier aircraft. Now you'll probably notice this looks very similar to what was it called? The one that launched the Virgin space thing.
Spaceship One.
Was it Spaceship One? It's sort of like a double fuselage airplane, and this in the middle here is where it can carry its payload. So basically, a rocket or a plane that's going to fly up into space can be attached on the middle here. Now, what this basically is, and what it's been. Hold on, where's my other picture? Hold on, got one more picture, which was where was it?
This is great for people on the podcast.
Oh yeah. Imagine a really big plane.
I'll have to do audio description.
Yeah.
Ross is currently showing many pictures of planes.
I can't find. I did have a picture of it in the hangar where they were making it, but I can't find it. So I have my face back again. Basically, what they've done to make this is they've bought a couple of Boeing 747s from United Airlines, and they've basically started taking them to pieces, and they're putting them back together in one big piece. So this has got 6 Boeing 747 engines on it. And what it's going to do is fly up to, I think it's 40,000 feet with, as you can see here, I'm not sharing it anymore, a rocket attached to the middle. And then that rocket can fly up. And obviously the reason for doing this rather than just firing a rocket off the ground, there's several reasons for this. One is that you can actually move the launch point. So the moment when you've got rockets, you have like the launch window, and obviously you get weather, and if the weather comes in, they have to scrub the launch and this sort of thing. With this, what it can do is it can take off and it can actually sort of avoid the bad weather. If the weather's coming in, it can fly a different direction. It can also help with hitting certain orbits. So obviously, things that get sent into space, they don't always go in the same orbit. So because this is mobile, it can sort of help with inserting into different orbits a bit easier.
Do you know what, Ross? I think we've covered this before.
Oh, have we?
I think I covered this, and I think I showed the original picture of the cut and shut 747.
Oh well.
So this is obviously the end of the prototyping and stuff. This is actually the design.
Yeah.
Well, we didn't have the design. I think it was about a year ago.
Well, it was going through a dodgy phase about a year ago because the people who were going to do the rocket. Let me just I found the other picture. Let me share this other picture. So this is where it is now. So you can see one of the fuselages here, and obviously you see the length of that aircraft hangar, and that's basically going to be the wingspan of the plane. So it is absolutely massive. So I think they reckon they were sort of 75% done. So it'll launch next year, hopefully. I mean, obviously, the first thing they're going to have to do when they do a launch is get a customer. So I don't know who their first customer is going to be. Although there's a NASA,
might not be Richard Branson, I'll tell you that.
There's a NASA thing called Dream Chaser, which is basically another reusable space aircraft, and they may use the Stratolauncher. So that's one of the potential customers. But yeah, the other thing about this, the third thing I was going to mention was obviously it's more efficient to launch this way, because rather than launching a rocket from ground level, where it has to basically push, because rockets, they don't fly, they just basically power through. They have to power through the dense air, whereas the plane can fly up, which takes less energy to get to 30,000 feet, and then you fire the rocket from the much thinner air, and I think you save about 10% of the energy used, which would be quite significant. You can carry higher payloads.
Because I said, I think I seem to remember that I said, oops, I keep hitting my microphone. That's what the springy thing is. I think I said when I originally did the very, very first ideas, and it was just a draft at the time, that the one thing that never ceases to amaze me about space, getting into space, is it's really, really, it's extremely, what's the opposite of finesse? Non-finessed. It is just literally like massive amount of rocket fuel and a big flame.
Yeah.
And like this cuts down on that a little bit, because you're already in the air and then you set the rocket off.
Yeah, and the air is so much thinner up there. What was that comment about helicopters that someone made once? About helicopters, the way they work is basically by beating the laws of physics into submission.
I don't know. I know. I think Ian Bottomley said that once.
Possibly, yeah.
And he's a pilot.
Yeah. But yeah, so I mean, if you can save, I mean, like I say, if you're carrying a massive payload, if you can save 10%, it means you can gain that in taking up more stuff, and the energy that's sort of effectively wasted by taking off at sea level compared to taking off already in the air can be used much better.
So they've got the hangar. They're well on the way to building it. They've got all of the, well, for want of a better word, scaffolding up. That's ready for testing starting next year, did you say?
Let me have a look. Where did they say it was going to first launch? Did they say when? How will it work? Not when. There's no time scale on this article I'm reading. It's expected to be finished before the end of the year, and then commercial services are expected to begin before 2020. So sometime between the end of the year and 2020, it's going to be test flying. So that's only 3 years really at the end of the year. So I would imagine next year, or 2018, they'll be beginning their tests. It's 76% complete. There we are. So the engines, landing gear, and one tail section is still to be installed.
One would think the engines would be the complicated bit. Well, maybe
no. Well, they've got the engines
because they're just jet engines, aren't they?
They've took them off the 2 planes that they've scuttled.
Are they Rolls-Royce Olympias or whatever? Yeah, I don't know. Oh no, that's really old. Olympias are the ones in the Concorde, weren't they? There won't be those.
There will be Rolls-Royce though. They're all Rolls-Royce, aren't they?
No, General Electric. The Boeings, I think, are General Electric. Anyway, so yeah, that's good. That's another one. So that's so there'll be a SpaceX one. There'll be the Blue Streak. There'll be the Virgin Galactic stuff, and there's another one. So there's
quite a lot. There's quite a lot going on at the moment, isn't there? The success of Elon Musk's SpaceX. Although it did have another failure, didn't it? They had a little run.
They had four. They had four.
Yeah.
I think they were entirely expecting this one to fail.
Right.
Because
it's not a failure if you expect it to fail, is it? It's a success.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think the previous one they expected to fail as well, but it worked. Mm-hmm. And this one, I think it ran out of rocket fuel.
Yeah, that was it. Yeah, it ran out just too early and then
just
dropped.
Too early. So consequently, the boosters cut out too early and it got unstable. Mm-hmm. But I think they knew that this was I think this is because they were pushing the satellite further out. So the fact is that when it came back, it had less fuel to use for landing. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so the Blue Streak one that's another reusable thing that goes up, comes back down. They've got that fixed. Although I'm slightly more impressed at the SpaceX one because that's on a bouncy pontoon in the middle of the sea. Mm-hmm. It's easier. I'm not saying there's a doddle. It's easier to land it back on the same position when the same position is in exactly the same position. Given the fact that the Earth has gone round a bit since it took off, but you can work that out via maths. Mm-hmm. It's much harder to land back in a position that you didn't take off from and is moving.
Exactly. And there's the thing with I'm assuming, I've never actually thought this, but I'm assuming the reason they're doing sea launches is that if they can nail that, they can pretty much launch from anywhere.
No, I heard it was something to do with permissions. They weren't allowed to, from where their base is, they weren't allowed to pull the rocket back over because there was population around.
Would it not be cheaper just to go slightly further away then?
I don't know. This is certainly what I heard. It certainly was that the US government or that state, the Florida state, I think I heard that they wouldn't give them a license to do it anywhere other than the sea.
Well, whatever the reason, like I say, if they get it consistently, working, it means they can basically just take a big boat out somewhere and start launching rockets off boats that come back down.
That's true.
Take an aircraft carrier and it can basically go anywhere and launch, which I'm sure would help. We're talking about one of the advantages of using a big plane is that you can change where it launches from. If you can do that over the sea, obviously more sea than land. So again, you'd be able to save energy inserting into correct orbits. But
the thing with you can't. It would be fairly hard, I would have thought, to do the maths to get the trajectory right. When you really need an absolute calm day. If you're coming from land, if you're blasting off from land, it's fixed. It's fairly static. Mm-hmm. If you're going from a plane, although you're moving in a constant trajectory.
Yeah.
But if you're on the sea and it's not calm, then you're bouncing all over the place, and there's I guess some sort of randomization in there. Yeah, I don't know.
Well, I mean,
I'm not doing the maths.
I imagine they wouldn't do it in the middle of the Atlantic. Put it this way.
Perhaps not. Perhaps not. But yeah, so interesting times, lots of opportunities, which is good because at the moment they've only got the blast-offs from Kazakhstan. There is no other way of getting stuff up there. But there was no way of getting people up there. The SpaceX one does deliver payloads up to the space station. And also, I heard today that China are going ahead with their own space station.
Really?
Yeah, yeah. They
Why
decided. They decided
Wow.
in the world of well, I don't know whether the world is a friendly place anymore. I'm jaded and depressed about the whole thing. But yeah, they decided to go ahead on their own.
Have they never been involved in the space station?
No,
No.
there was
That's
some
surprising.
reason, and it was something to do with America. America didn't want them, or America said you can't be part of IS while you're still doing X, and they're still doing X.
Right.
So yeah, so they've just decided to go on their own. Oh dear. So yeah, I'm not having a happy time at the moment. I just think the world is in a horrible, horrible place at this moment. Anyway, from that, let's just go into space, shall we? Let's just go out. Let's just leave this godforsaken planet and let's go into space. And there is a particular probe that has gone into space.
Haha, nicely done.
Oh, I thought so. So the spacecraft or probe, or no, I think it's a genuine spacecraft, not just a probe. I don't know what the definition when a spacecraft becomes a probe, or is it just a subset of spacecraft? I don't know. Anyway, it's
Very good question. I don't know.
It's a thing. It's been launched from Earth and it's going to Jupiter, and it's called Juno, and it was launched back in August 2011. And the remit is to understand Jupiter. Yay, that's a big scope there. But specifically, they were looking for a solid planetary core. They're looking to map the magnetic fields, because they know they've had previous ships go out there and go and just be lost because of this strong magnetic and radiation fields. And then they're going to measure the water and the ammonia in the atmosphere and observe any auroras. So I said August 2011 it was blasted off. Why is it taking so long, John? Well, good question. And it's because it's a long way. So Jupiter, let me remind you of the solar system. Essentially it's Earth, and then it's Mars, and then there's an asteroid belt, and then there's Jupiter. And there's a long way in between. Now, here's the thing. I have looked. I thought I'll find out the exact amount of miles, and I got 3 different mileage stats from the internet. One of them, I think Google said it was 365 million miles. Then there was space.com, I think, said it was 528 million miles, and then the Guardian article said it was 1.4 billion miles.
Well, what were you looking for? The distance that it's travelled?
Well, I originally said I want. Well, no, you see, this is the thing. This is the difference. I wanted the distance between Earth and Jupiter.
At what point, though? Because obviously they'll get further away from each other as they go round.
Well, there you go. That's the issue.
You should have asked the average distance.
Yeah, but I didn't ask that. You see, I wasn't specific. I just said I wanted a distance. But the 1.64 billion was the amount this actual spacecraft has travelled that 1.4 billion miles to get there. So it's a long way anyway. So they reckon that on the 4th of July, that's when the Juno craft is going to get as close as possible to Jupiter, and that's about 2,900 miles away. But it's as far in as they can do without getting completely zapped by their magnetic fields, because it's really, really strong. And they're going to have this elliptical orbit so that they kind of go past the really strong bits. Because there's been, like I said before, there was 2 other probes that have gone up to do this very task and have fallen foul of the magnetic fields and have crashed into the oblivion of Jupiter. So in order to stop this magnetic field affecting it, they've got it they've got the computers and all the electronics encased in this titanium covering, and it weighs like over 170 kilos of titanium. So it's I don't know how, because that would be fair. That's a fair amount of weight. Now, so this is 2,900 miles. The nearest before that was, I think, well, Pioneer. Is it 2 or Pioneer 11? One of the Pioneers in 1974.
Yeah, 2. I would have thought.
Yeah, so I was 2. So we'll say 2. I was 2 in 1974, and that got within 27,000 miles and sent some photos back. Galileo in 2003 was nowhere this close, but it still had technical problems when it was getting close to Jupiter. So they reckon the lifespan of Juno is no more than 20 months. It'll literally get incinerated by then. But yeah, so that's interesting coming up, and that'll happen before the next edition of WoS. So
so it's going to go into orbit around Jupiter, and
it's going to go into
it's going to orbit Jupiter 37 times apparently.
Yeah, and it's going to be elliptical, so there'll be and they've obviously mapped it so it doesn't hit any of those radiation spikes and magnetic spikes.
So are they going to send it around some of Jupiter's moons, like sort of do any close passes with them?
Well,
which is the really volcanic one? Is it Io?
I don't know. The mission. Let me have a look, and I have the mission here. Overview. So what is it actually going to do? You can tell I prepared, haven't you? It doesn't say anything about the moons. I have to say, not specifically. No.
I suppose it has to stay away from them in case it hits them, because some of them might have life on.
Yeah, it's that old chestnut that we've talked about before, about the fact that you affecting it with something from Earth.
Yeah.
But it's.
But if it hits Jupiter, it'll not be a problem, will it?
No, that's true. No. Yeah. So it does have a camera on it. It's got lots of stuff, lots of instrumentation on, but it does have a camera called Juno Cam, because they're very original, these scientists, and I think. I had all of this, and then I started researching other things, and I've left it.
It's got all sorts on it. There's Juno Cam. There's an ultraviolet spectrograph, a radio and plasma wave detector, the Jovian energetic particle detector, and a one for looking at the auroras, gravity science. Oh, it's looking into relativity as well. Magnometer, infrared mapper, and a microwave radiometer. So they're going to measure everything. Pretty much.
Yeah, so it's
the camera's only going to last for 7 orbits because it'll be broken by the radiation.
Nice.
It's a shame.
It's a nice hospitable planet, isn't it? Yeah. It doesn't tell you. It doesn't have any sort of like megapixel thing. It's 1600 by 1200 pixels is the imaging resolution.
Yeah. So the camera's not the important bit on this then?
No, I think this is just so you can show people on Earth, and then they might get reasonably excited.
It says Juno Cam has a field of view that's too wide to resolve any detail in the Jovian moons beyond 232 kilometers per pixel.
They're just dots then.
Yeah, you're not going to get much detail on there.
No. Yeah. But yes, so that's something to look forward to. I'll cast my mind into space to get my excitement up to pull me out of this depression that I'm in.
In other news, what was his name? Tim Peake came back since we last spoke, didn't he?
He did. Yes, he did, yes. And it seemed to be the happiest amongst all of them when he was getting bundled out of the Soyuz.
How cool was the other one though? That the first one that was brought out that was sitting there just with his shades on.
He was the Russian.
Yeah, he was just the most relaxed man in the world.
Because he'd been up there 6 times or something.
All right. It was
So
just
he was like, yeah, I've
shops.
done this before. But I thought the American Tim, the other Tim. I thought he looked particularly ill when he
They
came
took
back.
a while getting him out, didn't they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Tim Peake looked entirely happy, and to be honest, I've never actually seen his press conference that he's done after that.
No.
I saw him on the day when he was and somebody from the BBC interviewed him when he was actually still in his suit in the chair.
Yeah.
But it's when I see things like that, I just think it's the most expensive Heath Robinson thing you've ever seen. It's like so. What's going to happen is he's going to come down. The parachute is going to come out and he's going to whack into the earth.
Yeah.
There's going to be a little retro boost, but essentially whacking into the earth. Like, is there not a nicer way of doing that?
They ended up upside down, and there was some footage of it actually landing from a helicopter, and yeah, they really do whack.
Yeah, they do. Now they said
a big cloud of dust.
Yeah, they said that there was retro rockets that in the last X amount of meters would fire off to reduce it down to like 5 miles an hour. But I did not
look
see
like
that.
They did. No,
I did not see that.
Unless it's just a very, very short burst, but yeah, it looked like quite a heavy landing.
Yeah, but I mean
which must be horrible when you've been weightless for however many hundreds of days he's been up there.
Yeah, and I kind of think that the way that the Apollo guys came back and went into the sea was probably softer. I mean, okay, there is the possibility that you could drown.
Yeah.
But a bit softer, maybe one would think. I don't know. Coming down, slapping into water is probably much of a muchness, to be honest.
Yeah.
But anyway, I think there's a better way, and there possibly is a better way, and it's probably the way that SpaceX have decided to do it and stuff. But who knows? Or maybe this Paul Allen project, because I presume that's going to come down on wheels. Is it like a space shuttle when it lands?
Well, it is, but that the bit that lands isn't going to go into space though. It launches something. So
it launches something, but does that not come back?
Well, it depends on what that something is.
Well, if it's a craft with humans in, presumably
the NASA one. Yeah, the Dream Catcher, whatever it was called, Dream Chaser. Yeah, that's like a sort of a mini shuttle thing, so that'll land like a plane. Which would be the preferred thing, I think.
Yeah, I mean, because the space shuttle in general, the fact that it was supposed to be reusable, and it was kind of reusable. There was lots of it that they could reuse. It was very expensive, but the fact that it landed in a runway, was much more, reasonable, a little bit more humane.
Yeah.
Right. Well,
better television than some in the middle of a Kazakhstan.
Yeah, well, you couldn't actually see because the cameras were so away. That was over the hill. And presumably that was done in case they came down at such a rate that they were all destroyed on impact.
Possibly.
I don't know. I'm just throwing thoughts out there. Right. Anyway, that's it. That is the end of Wonder of Stuff 66. I think I said at the start. As always, we ask for your feedback, and we have a number of ways for you to get in touch with us, and these are as shown. The first off is the Twitter feed, which is at Wonder of Stuff. Now we have our own Twitter feed. We do post stuff on there, news articles, anything that we find information. But we'll try. At the moment, I've been doing it mostly, but I try and put a little bit of a thing on the end to give it some sort of perspective, human perspective, rather than just retweeting a news story. But we do have some on that feed. We do have some news stories from other sources, other science-based, engineering, technology-based sources. We've also got, obviously, the main website, which is wonderofstuff.com. That's the blog that has all of the YouTube videos on it since we started the blog, which was about start of 2015, I think. It has links of topics. It has the RSS feed for the audio version of the vodcast. It has information about where you can pick up the podcast on digital radios. It has information about how to sign up to our Twitter feed. It has anything. It has bits of information about the three of us. Anything, stuff like that. That's all there. And finally, we have obviously the email address, wonderofstuff@gmail.com. That's a shared mailbox we all have access to. Please give us some insight, give us some feedback, ask us some questions, whatever. Okay, well, that looks about the end of it for episode 66. So we'll see you in a couple of weeks for 67. So until then, we shall say bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.